In the heart of North London, a brutal gang war is tearing through the streets, fueled by greed, betrayal, and revenge. The Tottenham Turks and Hackney Bombers are locked in a deadly battle for control of a multi-million-pound heroin trade that stretches from the back streets of London to the mountains of Kurdistan. But this isn't just a drug war. It's a clash of cultures, legacies, and honor. With families torn apart and lives lost in the crossfire, how long can this violence continue before it explodes beyond the streets of London? Gang feud in the heart of North London, where vibrant Turkish bakeries line the streets next to betting shops and corner stores. Something far darker has taken root. Streets once defined by family-run businesses and friendly Friday market chatter are now the backdrop for a brutal gang war. A violent feud between rival Turkish gangs has escalated, all fighting for control of the UK's lucrative heroin trade. The gangs involved are not well known to the average Londoner. The Tottenham Turks, the Hackney Bombers, these names may not ring a bell, but their violence is anything but unheard of. In August 2023, the feud made headlines when a 9-year-old girl was shot in broad daylight in Dalston. She was caught in the crossfire of a botched gang hit, and the shockwaves from this incident exposed a brutal underworld that had long been simmering beneath the surface. This wasn't just a gangland dispute. It was the British front of a transnational drug war. The conflict extends far beyond the streets of London, reaching all the way to the ports of Turkey, the mountains of Kurdistan, and the clubs of Amsterdam. Behind the headlines is a network built on family ties, betrayal, revenge, and pride. This isn't just about making a profit. It's about legacy, history, and blood. Heroin remains the engine of this ongoing war, a trade that fuels the rise of modern mafia groups. A silent war is being fought across North London, with the Tottenham Turks and the Hackney Bombers locked in a violent battle for dominance and power. The damage is not just physical, it's cultural, tearing apart communities while leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. Turkish Migration, the story of London's Turkish gangs, doesn't begin with drugs or guns. It begins with migration. In the 1970s and 1980s, waves of Turkish and Kurdish immigrants arrived in the UK, fleeing political upheaval, military coups, and economic collapse. Many of these immigrants settled in North and East London, establishing close, knit communities in areas like Tottenham, Hackney, and Stoke Newington. At first, these were just families focused on survival, opening cafes, textile shops, and kebab houses to make a living. But the economic hardship that drove them to leave their homeland didn't disappear upon arrival. For some, especially young men, opportunity seemed scarce, and crime appeared to offer a quicker way to earn money, gain power, and earn respect. As the second generation of immigrants grew up, they found themselves caught between cultures, trying to assimilate into British society while maintaining strong ties to their Turkish and Kurdish heritage. It was during this time that some of these young men, feeling disconnected and marginalized, turned to the streets. By the late 1980s, Turkish-run organized crime had begun to emerge in London. One of the first families to rise to prominence in this new world of crime was the Arif family. Known as Britain's answer to the mafia, the Arifs operated out of Peckham and became linked to extortion, robbery, and eventually drug trafficking. Their rise marked the beginning of a new era in London's criminal underworld, setting the stage for future rivalries and bloodshed as more gangs formed and fought for power. Heroine Trade. The rise of Turkish and Kurdish gangs in London was heavily tied to the heroin trade. By the late 1980s, Turkey had become a key transit hub for Afghan opium, and London's Turkish gangs were perfectly positioned to tap into this lucrative supply. With direct ties to families in Turkey, these gangs could bypass middlemen, giving them a significant advantage over other criminal networks. As heroin flooded the streets of London, it wasn't just a commodity, it was the backbone of a criminal empire. Turkish and Kurdish gangs quickly solidified their grip on the heroin trade, importing raw opium directly from Afghanistan, then processing it in Turkish labs before sending it to the UK via established smuggling routes. The heroin made its way westward through Iran, eastern Turkey, and the Balkans, entering the UK through major ports like Dover and Felixstowe. Once in Britain, the heroin entered the hands of gangs like the Tottenham Turks and Hackney Bombers. These gangs were not just fighting for control of territory, they were fighting for control of a massive, multi-million-pound operation. The heroin didn't just move in grams, it moved in kilos, with the profits generated creating a well-established and efficient supply chain. At the top of the pyramid, gang leaders rarely touched the drugs themselves. Instead, they managed an intricate web of sub-dealers, mules, and stash house operators. The profits were staggering. 1 kilo of heroin, which could be imported for under 10,000, could fetch over 40,000 on the streets once processed. This vast profit generated intense competition between gangs, fueling the violence that would later erupt into the bloody gang wars of North London. Revel gangs. As the heroin trade in London flourished, so did the competition. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, rival gangs began to emerge, each vying for control of the lucrative market. The Tottenham Turks and the Hackney Bombers became the two most prominent factions. These gangs, though sharing common roots in Turkish and Kurdish communities, differed greatly in their approach to crime. The Tottenham Turks were known for their disciplined, calculated methods. Their leadership structure was hierarchical, drawing inspiration from older, more established crime families. They viewed violence as a strategic tool to maintain control over territory and power. In contrast, the Hackney Bombers embraced chaos and impulsivity. The group's name, meaning bombers, fit their aggressive, media-savvy approach. They were flashy, using social media, rap lyrics, and public threats as weapons to establish dominance. What began as a business conflict soon turned personal. Betrayals, power plays, and accusations sparked a violent feud. As the heroin trade became the fuel for this escalating battle, shootings, turf wars, and public bloodshed started to define the streets of North and East London. The competition wasn't just for drugs, it was about pride, revenge, and proving dominance. International expansion. By the mid-2010s, the violence between the Tottenham Turks and Hackney Bombers had spread beyond London. The feud, which once seemed confined to local streets, had become a transnational conflict. As gangs expanded their operations, their influence reached cities across Europe, leaving behind a trail of violence and fear. The murder of Zafer Eren, a key figure in the Tottenham Turks, in Moldova in 2024, marked the brutal realization that this war had crossed borders. Once viewed as isolated incidents, the gang-related killings now had international reach, with bodies turning up in Spain, Germany, and the Netherlands. European cities like Antwerp, Rotterdam, and Barcelona became critical hubs for staging and repackaging heroin before it was smuggled back into the UK or across Europe. This transnational expansion posed new challenges for law enforcement. Gangs were able to operate across multiple countries, using encrypted messaging, crypto wallets, and burner phones to evade detection. As the Turkish gangs grew in power, they began to rival other European crime syndicates, making them a rising threat in the global drug trade. With violence now exported to vulnerable regions, the international scope of this feud became a serious concern for authorities. If this story shocked you, make sure to hit the subscribe button for Dark Motive and stay updated on the dark side of Britain's underworld. What do you think will be the next twist in the Tottenham Turks and Hackney Bombers feud? Could it spread even further across Europe? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't miss our next video, How This Quiet Town Hid One of Britain's Most Ruthless Drug Rings. True Crime UK, coming soon! Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.